So when the Jewish people left Egypt, even though they were no longer slaves, they needed to learn how to be free. It's not something that just happens naturally, because when a person is living in a situation long enough, they learn to adapt, and their outlook and their mindset is formed based on their situation, especially being that the Jews who left Egypt were born into slavery. So they had never really experienced the idea of freedom. So in order to receive the Torah, the Jews had to go through this process of self-refinement and working towards being able to receive the Torah. And so from the holiday of Passover, which is when the Jewish people left Egypt, until the holiday of Shavuot, which is the holiday when the Jews received the Torah, we have a 49-day period. And the 49-day period is broken into 7 weeks. And each week, we are counting towards the giving of the Torah. So we have the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer, counting the Omer, which we practice nowadays when each day from the second night of Passover until Shavuot, we actually state a number and we say, tonight is night number whatever of the Omer, and we count every evening after nightfall, and we mark the day that we are one day closer to receiving the Torah. Now, just for practical purposes, for those who are keeping the mitzvah, who have never heard of the mitzvah, or anywhere in between, the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer requires a blessing. Now, in order to make the blessing, the blessing that you make for the mitzvah is the act of counting all 49 days. Now, one is only allowed to make a blessing on a mitzvah if you're actually going to perform it properly. For example, if you make a blessing over food, you need to eat that food. If you make a blessing for washing your hands, you need to wash your hands. In order to make the blessing for the mitzvah, you have to fulfill it completely. The mitzvah of counting the Omer is a mitzvah that spans 49 days. So one only makes the blessing if one is counting the Omer from day one. So if you were not counting the Omer from day one, you should count the day that we are up to, but without the blessing. So if, for example, you forget to count one night and the next day you still forget to count, then you would count without the blessing. So for anyone who is counting so far with a blessing, if you started from day one, then that's great. I will be honest with you, I forgot one night, so I am counting every night now without the blessing because I missed the night, so I'm not saying the blessing. You can always find someone who is saying the blessing and say amen to their blessing as well. But we have this mitzvah to count. And when we say the day of the Omer, we also say with it an attribute. Now, what are these attributes? What are these character traits that we state while we count the Omer? So the Torah teaches us, and it is explained in Hasidic thought, in the Kabbalistic mysticism, the deeper meaning of the Torah, that our soul is comprised of 7 character traits, 7 attributes which define our soul. In Hebrew, they're called the 7 midot, the 7 characters, and each one is focused on for 1 week. So we have our 7 characters, which are chesed, which is kindness, gevura, which is discipline. We have tiferet, which is balance. We have netzach, which is endurance. Hod, which is beauty and tranquility. Yesod, which is integrity, and Malchut, which is dignity and royalty. So we have these 7 ideals. And each week, we work towards refining that category. And within each week, there are 7 weeks, and each day of the week, there are 7 days of the week, we focus on one element attributes as they pertain to another one of the attributes. And I'll give you an example of that. For example, week 1, we are focused in general on kindness. So day 1 of week 1 will be the kindest version of kindness. Day 2 will be discipline within kindness. Day 3 will be the balance of kindness. We have the integrity of kindness. In week number 2, when we're focused on discipline, we will discuss kindness within discipline, discipline within discipline, balance of discipline. Within each week, for that each day, we are working towards one character trait, which will help us become free people, which will help us become the type of person that is able to make good choices, that is able to appreciate the ability to have free choice and make the right choices. Because freedom that is completely unleashed without boundary could be very dangerous. Freedom without character, very toxic. And freedom without the ability to channel it towards something positive could have very serious consequences. Now, let's give the example of a child. We want children to be free. We want children to run around. We want them to express themselves. We want a child to be able to go outside and play and have fun. But if there are no boundaries, it's dangerous. Their running can take them into dangerous places. If they have nothing fun to actually do, if they don't have a game to play or a ball to play with or a trampoline to bounce on, they'll end up getting into trouble, or they'll end up doing something dangerous. They'll end up hurting themselves because it's freedom without any form of proper expression. Same thing is within ourselves. If we become free, but we have no goal, where does our freedom take us? So when a person doesn't have a goal, one of two things could happen. Either they can be reckless. If a person who was just released from prison, for example, but doesn't have anywhere meaningful to go, then either they'll do reckless things because they can go anywhere, or they'll go nowhere and they'll just stay home and continue to be a prisoner even though they're free. Now, as Jews leaving Egypt, the same thing could have happened. Without God to follow, without Mount Sinai to keep in mind as a destination, as a place to go towards, as a place to reach for, what would happen? Where would the Jews go? They wouldn't go anywhere meaningful. So either they would have just been dangerous, assimilated, gone into other nations, or they would have stayed in the desert and become slaves to the ways of the desert. And we, within ourselves, having just come from the holiday of Passover, having just worked on ourselves to experience freedom, what are we going to do with that freedom? Now that we are free, now that we have released ourselves from the shackles of whatever is holding us back, how are we going to make it worth it? How are we going to make it worthwhile that we are free people? So in order to do that, we need to work towards a goal. We need to work towards a purpose that we are trying to achieve now that we are not being held back by our limitations. So for each of us, that could be a different goal. But the first and most important thing is to remember to set those goals. The second thing is to remember that in order to reach the goal, we need to go day by day. Reaching a goal is not something that you just run like a sprint and you get there as fast as you can. It's about counting each day. It's about each day working with something small, doing a small step, something meaningful, and something sustainable. God doesn't tell us, ready for the Torah? Let's go, become perfect. We're headed for the Torah. Change, perfect yourself. God doesn't tell us that. God doesn't even tell us, okay, you have 7 attributes, work on one each day. No, because that's not either sustainable. No. Small goals. This week, we're working on the idea of chesed, kindness, week 1. Well, not actually this week, but we'll get to this week's in a moment. But the first week, we have kindness. It's week 1. Doesn't mean you're going to be kind in 1 second. Doesn't mean you're going to perfect the element of kindness within yourself. But now take this short-term goal and put it into bite-sized pieces. Today, work on unconditional kindness. Tomorrow, work on setting boundaries for your kindness. Discipline within kindness, because too much kindness is not good either. The next day, let's work on balancing on our kindness. The next day, let's try working on being honest about our kindness, kindness with integrity, kindness with meaning. Every day, we focus on something small, because when we focus on something small and something practical, then it's sustainable. Once we have completed this goal, let's move on to our next goal, while still trying our best to, it's cumulative. So we don't want to forget about being kind as soon as we're working on discipline, but every day something small. And when we take baby steps towards reaching our goal, then when we get to our goal, not only did we reach it, we're able to keep it and we're able to appreciate it, especially when it comes to doing mitzvahs. And I was once having this discussion actually with a woman who I was teaching her about the laws of Jewish marriage. And the laws of Jewish marriage are quite intricate and involve many different laws. There's laws of going to the mikveh, there's the laws of preparing for the mikveh. There are many intricate laws. She was getting married and I was teaching her the laws of Jewish marriage. And, she came the first day and she tells me, Mushka, I got a book and I read the whole book. I'm so overwhelmed. And I said, no kidding. You just tried living your whole entire marriage in one night. That's very overwhelming. Of course it is. Let's take step by step. Let's start with page 1. And we had a few classes and we went through the laws. And by the time we got to the last law, and I finished teaching her about it and also sharing, practical applications to it, it was still a lot. It was manageable. Now, that was only because she hadn't actually started keeping laws. And then I told her, I said, listen, after you get married and you start using the laws, you'll realize that you can't always do everything, but you can do little bits and pieces at a time because you know what your goal is. So you're able to do little bits and pieces and work towards a common goal. Another example would be for someone who is trying to take upon themselves to keep Shabbat. Shabbat has many, many different details and laws and customs and restrictions and beautiful, meaningful customs that we do on Shabbat. Now, if someone were to dive headfirst into the deep end and try to keep all of Shabbat in one night, 1 week, let's go, we're keeping Shabbat, we're doing it perfectly, it would be very overwhelming because it's so much. But God doesn't want us to take upon ourselves things in an overwhelming headfirst deep end to the deep end. No, God wants us to do step by step, learn it, practice it, apply it, make it meaningful, and then be able to sustain it. Then move on to something else and learn it and apply it and keep it, make it sustainable, and then we can move on. So when we go day by day, the counting of the Omer is teaching us that we're counting the Omer, we're counting the days, but it's not about the passing of time. We're not counting the days because we want to know how much time has passed. We're counting the days because we want to know, what level am I up to? What have I already accomplished? If we really work towards this week, we are going to work every day on something small, then when we count, today is day 7, we can say, wow, we made 7 steps towards our goal. And that is why when we're counting towards Shavuot, we count upwards, which seems quite contrary to what is normally considered a countdown. Literally in the word, a countdown. You count down. When you're counting towards something that you're excited about, you count down. Okay. All of my students have a countdown to our next vacation, and all of them, they're very excited about the next vacation. They all have a countdown. Very nice. Every day they cross off a day. Okay. 60 days, then 59 days, 58 days, because we're getting one day closer. That means that the day that passed, what's exciting? It's the days that are coming that are exciting, because now there's less days. But when we count upwards, we're looking back on each day as an accomplishment, as a period of growth. So when we count, today is day 3, it means I have accomplished, I have grown 3 steps more. Today is day 19, means I am 19 steps better than I was. I am 19 levels more free. I am 19 levels more refined. I have 19 more refined character traits within me. And this is the idea of counting upwards, because we are making each day something that counts, something that is meaningful, something that is purposeful, something that actually was worth it, because it wasn't just about the passing of time. It was about making the time meaningful, making the time sustainable. And this is the idea of counting the Omer. Another idea is the concept of numbers in general. You know, when you think about numbers, it's like, okay, what's a number? This number, that number. But if you think about an important number, if somebody says, let's say, you know, they're trying to impress a prospective employer at a job interview, and, you know, they're describing their work experience. If somebody says, well, I have 10 years experience in this field, that number 10 just became very significant, because it's more than just 10 years. It's the number 10 reflecting a large amount of experience, significant amount of experience. Another example would be if somebody says, you know, oh, my child just turned 3. It's not just the number 3, it's a significant birthday. Or if somebody says, I just celebrated my 40th birthday, it's not just the number 40 versus 41. This is a big milestone. Numbers become milestones when they are connected with growth. Otherwise, it's just a number. What's a number? You're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 100, 150. It's just a number. But when it reflects something significant, then it is a symbol of growth. So if we count the days of the Omer and we're just doing the mitzvah, and every night we say tonight's day number 1, day number 2, day number 3, then it's just a number. But if it comes along with significant growth, then it's not just a number, it's a milestone. And then each day becomes a milestone that reflects actual growth. And that is what Sefirat HaOmer is teaching us, that when we're counting the days, it has to be connected with an action. It has to be connected with some form of growth that we did during that time. And this concept really teaches us how to work towards achieving a goal. Number 1, we have to set goals. And number 2, we have to do baby steps towards achieving our goals. So what is the goal that we're working towards? What is the goal that we are counting towards? Because we already received the Torah. We're already a Jewish nation. It's not like if you don't show up to Mount Sinai, you won't get the Torah. So what is it? But the truth is that every year on Shavuot, which is the holiday that we are counting towards, we receive the Torah once again. We affirm our connection to God, and we once again accept upon ourselves to be God's nation. And so, in essence, we are getting the Torah all over again. It's like, and this is not a Jewish concept, but we can take this idea and apply it to the concept in this case. It's like somebody renewing their vows. Now, in Judaism, we don't have the concept of renewing our vows because a chuppah is not about vows. A Jewish marriage is not about vows. It's about the connection between our souls. And that's not something that has to be renewed because that's what a Jewish marriage is. But if you would take the concept of renewal of the vows, every year on Shavuot, we renew our vows with God, which is actually interesting because the giving of the Torah is compared to the marriage of Jewish people and God. So yes, in essence, we are renewing our connection with God every year on Shavuot. And if we want that to be meaningful, then we actually have to prepare ourselves to do that. So for each of us, that could be a different mitzvah. But we need to each choose something that when we connect to God once again on Shavuot and take upon ourselves the Torah, we have even one mitzvah, a small mitzvah, doesn't matter what it is, that we are taking upon ourselves personally, not just as a collective Jewish people, but each one of us taking upon ourselves a mitzvah. And if we prepare for that now, then each day we can take a small, bite-sized, easy to chew and swallow step towards reaching that goal. So when Shavuot actually comes, we're ready to accept God and accept our connection to Torah as a free person because we've made the choice from a place of growth. We've made the choice from a place of connection rather than from a place of slavery, rather than from a place of being forced to do it in that way. It's kind of like a person who receives a very precious gift, but they never open it and they never actually look at it. Freedom that God gave us is a gift. It's like a treasure chest. Now, if you receive a treasure chest that's filled with jewels or filled with golden coins and you leave it closed, then you have it, but you're not using it. If you open that treasure chest and you count each one and you actually use it, and you either put these jewels into beautiful jewelry to wear or adorn it in some sort of way, or if you take the coins and you buy things with it, then you're using the treasure. On Passover, we are given a treasure chest of freedom. We are given all of these attributes. Our character is released from slavery and is now free. So we have all of these incredible attributes in our soul, like kindness and discipline and balance and all of these beautiful character traits within us that are now free. They're not bound up by our limitations. But are we going to open that treasure chest? Are we going to use the treasures that God gives us? Or are we just going to keep it closed and have these treasures? And that's up to us. So if we open that treasure chest and we use each one of our attributes and we focus on how we can use each one of our character traits in a positive, wholesome, and meaningful way, then we're not just owning freedom, but we're using our freedom. We're channeling our freedom. We're channeling the freedom of our soul into something meaningful, into something practical, and into something that is sustainable, because we're able to now actually reach a goal and move forward and experience true growth. So this is what Sfirat HaOmer teaches us. We want to use all of our attributes. We want to use all of the meaningful elements of our soul that God gives us. And we want to do it in a bite-sized, easy to handle way, because that is the only way it is sustainable. Working our way towards the top, if you want to climb a mountain, you got to go step by step. Sliding a rope or sliding a ladder is what you do when you're going down. Going down, you go flying down. But going up, you can't just fly up the ladder. You can't just zoom up the pole. You have to go step by step. If you try going too quickly, you fall. That's just what happens. In order to actually reach a higher level, it has to be step by step. And when we do it step by step, then we can appreciate each step along the way. And when we get there, we're not actually out of breath. We can enjoy the view because we got there in a way that we appreciated each day, and we made each day worthwhile and something to appreciate. So God willing, in our coming classes, we're actually going to go through these attributes, find practical applications for these attributes of our soul, and we're going to delve into that concept more deeply. But tonight, and I'm going to end the class a little bit earlier tonight, I'm going to leave you with this idea that in order to achieve actual freedom, that we are able to stay free and we are able to take our freedom and use it as a gift, we need to set a goal. We need to work towards that goal, and we need to take small steps each day in order to achieve that goal in a sustainable way. And this is what we learn from the counting of the Omer, that every day we count 1, 2, 3, until we reach 49. And that is when the Jewish people received the Torah, not as slaves from Pharaoh and now becoming slaves to God, but as free people who made the choice to be God's nation. So good night, ladies. We do have a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself.
Mushka, it's not really a question, but it's just to let you know. Are you familiar? I think it's called the Innocence Files. It's on Netflix.
I don't watch Netflix, so you have to fill me in.
It shows these people who are wrongfully convicted, some, either with life or death sentences, and through a team of attorneys working to get them released. Then I guess in the Netflix shows, that's what it's showing, and I guess it just couples on what your father was doing that I just found magnificent.
That's really beautiful, and I'm sure you can see from these people that even once they're free, they have to go through a process of becoming free in the mind and in their soul, and really experiencing that as like a new outlook on life, which doesn't happen in a moment.
That's right. Absolutely.
Wow, that's very interesting. That's fascinating.
Yeah, some of it is through, and then the people who were wrongfully convicted, like, they go into the details of what the wrong evidence, and then the people who are wrongfully convicted are fighting so that other people don't have to go through what they went through, that evidence that should have never been admitted.
Wow, that's very sad.
Yeah.
That's very unfortunate. We live in a world where we are faced with so much evil and so much negativity, and also just so much darkness and like lack of clarity of the truth. And that's really what we're working towards, towards the coming of Mashiach, when we'll experience clarity and we'll experience truth in a revealed way. And that's definitely an example of a lack of truth and clarity that's clouding judgment in the world. Wow. Well, ladies, good night. It was lovely seeing all of you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you next week. I will keep you updated if we'll have an in-person option next week. I was unable to get through to Pearl this week to see if she was up to it. But but I'll keep you posted as it comes. So
Thank
good night, ladies.
Thank
And
you.
even when we do in person, we'll still have the Zoom option for anyone who'd like to join that way. So
All right.
good night, ladies. All the
Thank
best.
you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining.